Coming up this week on this lifestyle show, we're talking sound design with sound designer Marc Barnes. He's talking about sound design on the Modwave, Wavestate, Hydrasynth, a bit about being a musician and the difference between sound design and being a gigging musician, and lots more. So let's get straight to Marc. Marc, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to get you on because we've been communicating for some time. You are a synth enthusiast, sound designer, musician, amongst other things.
Absolutely, yes.
And I thought it would be great to get you on to talk about a bit about how you go about creating working on sound design, how you get your inspiration for your sort of the sounds, which synths you like to process and program on, and then sort of the way that you publish your sounds and all that kind of thing. But I also wanted to get a bit of background on you. So before we go into the sound design, just tell us a bit about you then. I can see a nice selection of synths in the background.
Basically, I've been a semi-pro musician since I was about 14 years old. I done my first paid gig at 14 years old, and I've been gigging every weekend, and I've had numerous keyboards and synths and organs and things like that over the years. And about 8 years ago, I was watching Sonic Talk, and I'm like, this looks real great fun what these guys are doing. I had own synthesizers, but I'd never really sort of programmed my own sounds. I'd edited a few sounds to suit my needs. I said I want to try getting into that, and I looked at a DeepMind 12 that was sort of fresh on the market at the time. Everyone was talking about it, and then after a little sort of chat with Ty-Un, when he talked me into buying the Dreadbox Erebus that's sitting there and a Studio Logic Sledge, and I just sort of got into designing my own patches from there. I sort of started off sort of recreating sort of some classic patches, some classic B50 patches and things like that on the Sledge, and copying other people's tutorial videos, and then I just sort of get into sort of experimenting myself and try to come up with my own ideas. And ever since, I've been doing sound design, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I really enjoy it. But so then, when you first sort of got into music, so are you a keyboard player, guitarist?
So I'm traditionally an organist, not a church organist or anything, an organist. So, basically, when I was a young child, I wanted to play guitar because my older brothers, I was the youngest of the family, and all they sort of played was sort of heavy rock and heavy metal vinyls all day, and that all I heard was all this crazy shredding guitar playing, and I thought it was fantastic, and I wanted to learn to play the guitar, but my dad sort of stepped in and said, no, you're better learning to play the organ. And to be fair, for what I do now, he was actually 100% right, because he said to me, if you learn to play the organ, you're learning to play the melody, you're learning to play the chords, and you're learning to play the bass all in one go. And he said, see if later on you want to learn to play the guitar, that's fine, but I want you to learn the organ first. So I went to organ, and then I later on moved to keyboards and things. It's a bit of a kind of gone art now, that playing the organ and playing the bass pedals and that. It's, I mean, some of the organs I see going for like 50 quid on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm looking at them, I'm saying they were $5,000 in the 80s. Those organs. So it's a kind of a bit of lost art. So I've came from the background of learning to play the organ, like learning to read music and stuff like that. But which, by the way, I don't do now. I don't read any music or anything now. It's all by ear now, and I learn things, but you never look at dots or anything anymore. I doubt if I'd be able to now. It's been that many years. But that's my sort of background as a musician. When I was 17, I bought my first synth, if you like, with my own money. Well, it was a synth / workstation. It was a Korg X3, and then a couple of years later, I bought a Korg Prophecy with one of my student loans.
That was an analog modelling.
Physical modelling.
Yes, it had the multi-mode.
It done analog modelling and physical modelling.
Yes.
Now, to be honest with you, how any of the sounds at that time, how any of the sounds of that were created at the time, I didn't really have much idea about, even although I'd like studied things like physical modelling and things like that at university, but it never even occurred to me to try and program a synth myself. You just bought synths because the preset sounded great, and basically I played this Prophecy and I'm like, whoa, that sounds absolutely phenomenal. I think I'll get that. And basically one full-term student loan went on the Prophecy.
You can now get that. It's in the Korg collection now.
Yeah, I know that. To be fair, I think I tried a demo of it, and I played it, and I was like, maybe that didn't sound so great after all. I don't know, but I mean, certainly at the time, and I think the thing about the Prophecy is as well, it was the actual hardware with the little ribbon controller and the bar that you bend on and your macro knobs, and you could basically tweak the sound about so amazingly without having actually any knowledge of what you were actually doing, and you just tweak about the sense of, so that's great, I'll just use it like that. And that was the way I used it. I had a rolling keyboard that the gigs had the X3, and I had the Prophecy on top, which I plugged my keytar into the Prophecy because it was all lead sounds, so all my sort of synth leads and guitar. There was a cracking guitar lead on it that played a fifth guitar, but if you ran your finger along the ribbon, it became like a single note lead guitar. And what I did, I managed to work out how I managed to work this out at that time. I don't know, because I really didn't know what I was doing. I worked out how to connect an expression pedal up to it and set the expression pedal up to do what the ribbon controller was doing. So I had a pedal and I had this lead guitar sound, and when I wanted chords, I'd press the pedal down and the fifth would come in and I'd play power chords with it. And then when I wanted to play a solo, I'd press the pedal flat out and I'd play my guitar leads or whatever.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny you mentioned about August. My granddad was an organist.
Yeah.
There's a picture of him over there, sat with his Hammond, and he always had, he always had a Hammond, or he then went into the Yamaha, FX or F, but he always had a Yamaha digital one.
Probably be the elect.
Yes, electrons. Right, something.
So there was my brother had an HS8.
That was the really big.
Yeah, and it cost him £5,500 back in 1980 something. And I was playing about and I'm like, this just sounds amazing. Can I not play my brother's organ all the time? And then they had a sort of cheap organ in the house for that's your organ to practice on and do your music lessons. And then if I got a treat, I was allowed to play my big brother's big HS8.
Yeah, I used to, when we go and visit them at the weekend, I just go and sit there, put the headphones on, and all the family are talking. I just completely ignored them and used to play with this Yamaha. But I always wanted a synth, so he bought me my DX100 that's up there, because I wanted a synth, so that's what
well, to be fair, it was very similar sounds in these organs to the DX range. Basically, they created all the sounds using the DX FM synthesis kind of thing. There was no samples or anything at that time.
And he did he could do that properly with the bass pedals. I never mastered that. I think now I feel like I could do it from watching Genesis and everything, and just using that Taurus kind of bass pedal sound. But
I mean, to be honest with you, like a lot of people say to me, I don't know how anybody can manage to play the bass pedals and play it, but it's actually, I think it's a lot easier to play the bass pedal, the bass notes with your feet, rather than going like this on a piano. So as someone who, and I just put it out there, I'm not a piano player by any means, but I play a lot more piano style music now. I've had to get a bit better at it. I still wouldn't call myself a pianist by any means, but in my opinion, it's a lot easier to hit your bottom notes with your foot rather than jumping about your left hand and sustaining them and stuff like that. So it's probably something you should give a try.
Yeah, you can get some mini pedals. I could probably get some. Yeah. I've got space somewhere. So all the space is filled everywhere else. So you might as well fill the floor up now.
Fill it with some bass pedals.
Yeah. But his always golden thing was whenever he got, because I used to go with him when he was, thinking of changing. He wanted to hear what the Hammond sound was like, and that was the number one thing. If it sounded a good Hammond, then it was
to be honest with you, it's a wonderful sound, like a proper Hammond organ. It's just fantastic, especially with a Leslie speaker, a proper Leslie speaker. Then nothing quite sounds like it, to be honest.
I have a vague memory of being very young and having, I think he had an M1, the Hammond M1, and with the full pedal board. So not just the was it, there'll be 8 note, won't they normally?
Usually an octave.
Yeah, but he had the big one that went on. I can remember crawling around it, going underneath the manuals. But and like you said, now because they're so big and cumbersome, people.
So it's more or less a kind of lost art.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You get like Hammond and things like that still in rock records and country records, and people play maybe one tier of a Hammond along with other keyboards, but the whole actual art of actually sitting playing everything in an organ is sort of completely disappeared. Whereas at one time, that's all you'd ever see. You'd see an organist and a singer.
Yeah.
And the organist would play everything, the bass, the chords, and they'd have a singer or be just playing themselves. And that is something you very rarely see now.
And I guess that's particularly in northern British or northern, in the north, I guess same in Scotland, but in the northern England in the 60s, 70s, working men's clubs, an organist and a singer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was that. But I mean, it's like completely.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm almost embarrassed to tell people I started an organ.
Yeah. And I used to think, God, it sounds so old-fashioned. But now when I hear the sound of a really nice Leslie Hammond, it sounds amazing.
And like when you speak to younger people about it, a lot of them don't even know what that is.
Yeah. It's certainly taking a modern keyboard around is a lot easier than taking around the B3 and a Leslie.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, I remember my brother used to gig with that Yamaha HS8, and like it was like horrendous. So you had to like screw all the sides off and take the sides and lift the top off and pack it all into his estate car, and it was like a horrendous thing to lift it, but he used to lift it to gigs all over the place and play it, and I'm like, that's just crazy if you think of that now.
So now you're gigging now, are you?
Yeah, I'm still a gigging musician now. So
you're your own band?
yeah, so I've got a band called Angel Star, which my wife Cheryl and my best friend Frank sing in the band with me, and we've been going together doing gigs in the same format with the same people for it's almost 21 years now.
Brilliant.
And we gig most weekends.
So now what would currently what you taking on when you go out on
the
road?
So to be fair, I've got a Kurzweil SP6 stage piano that I use for piano sounds and electric pianos and things like that. I've got a Roland FA06, the older one, not the new F06 or whatever it is, that I use for like extra sound, for extra pads and things like that, and dance music sounds. And I've got my keytar, my Roland Axe Edge, that I've programmed a set of sounds that I use for my gigging.
Yeah.
My gigging. It's basically, I use probably 95% custom sounds that I've programmed and put together on the AX Edge.
And I suppose then we'll talk sound design in a minute, but this is where sound design and performance in two different things really, aren't they? Two different sets of tools that you need for that almost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, the purchasing of the Roland AX Edge was actually a big step for me in terms of actually setting up a website and things like that to then go on and sell my sound, because basically what happened was this Roland keytar came out, which was actually the first Roland instrument that was actually Zencore. So now
is it right?
they're all talking Zencore this, Zencore that. I mean, to be honest with you, my opinion is it's modern day general MIDI. That's what Zencore is. That's the easiest way to explain to somebody what Zencore is, right? But I got this thing, and there was like virtually no information on it. And if you've owned any Roland gear yourself, I'm sure you'll understand what the manuals are like from Roland. And it's got this editor app on the iPad that's horrendous to edit it. But I bought this, and I'm like, well, look, do you know what? I can take the easy option out and just use this as a MIDI controller. But I'm like, I've spent this money on this. I need to make this instrument work for me. And then so I started making up sounds on it to play the songs that I play with my band. And that's how it started. And then I made a few videos of me playing them, and some people were saying, "Oh, would you be willing to sell me your sounds that you use?" And that's sort of how it sort of started.
Right.
And then later on, I started buying synthesizers with a view to actually just sound design on them. So for example, the likes of the Wavestate or the Modwave, I've bought these synths purely from the point of view that, do you know what, I'm going to use these to sound design and see what I can get and see where my creativity will take me.
Yeah. So that brings us on to what synths did you? So you mentioned the Roland. So what was the sort of first synths that you got then when you wanted to get into this sound design?
Sound design. So I got the Sledge and I got the Erebus.
Yep.
And I started doing some sounds and watching other people's synth tutorials, how they created like classic patches and things like that. And then obviously there was the keytar. That was the sort of thing that started it off, because people were really liking the sounds I made, and they're saying, "Oh, geez, they sound a lot better than the factory presets. Could I get that guitar patch I've made on my keytar?" and that led to that. And then I got the Korg Minilogue XD, and that's just a wonderful little instrument to sit and program. And it's probably, I would say, it's probably the easiest synth out to get a good sound out of. It's really difficult to make it sound bad, that instrument. It's so simple and so logical and so straightforward. I started putting together presets for the Korg Minilogue XD, and like I never even sort of thought anything about it. But I was talking to Jamie Geosynths, and he said, "Oh, I've heard these Minilogue XD patches you've been doing." He said, and he's like, "Do you know what? You should be selling them." And I'm like, "Well, actually, come to think of it, I've just been made redundant from my day job, so that's maybe a good time to start selling these things." And it just sort of developed from there.
Yeah, at the Minilogue, I've got the original Minilogue. Yeah. And which I really like. It kind of it like you say, it's so simple, isn't it? It's analog synth. But you can get some nice patches out of it.
Yeah.
But then going from that onto Modwave and Wavestate, that's a bit of a leap forward, isn't it? Which one did you get first?
Right. So I got the Wavestate first, and it was a strange situation because I went from something that's 4-voice analog and a very simple subtractive synthesizer to this heavily deep, complex, sample-based wave sequence and 4-layer thing with all this polyphony and everything. And it was basically just, I heard the video at NAMM and I'm like, I really like the sound of that. And I said, I can remember the original Wavestation, but I can remember it, but I don't actually know anything about it. And I can't actually remember any of the sounds that were on it or anything. But I remember in my university studio there was a Wavestation sitting, and I never really thought much about it at that sort of age. I was like, well, I've got a Korg X3 now, and that's newer than the Wavestation, so it must be better. that was my attitude then at that young age. But I heard the demos at NAMM, and I said, do you know what? That actually sounds really good. And I could see, although I'd went from the Minilogue XD, I could see parallels with the Keytar that I'd been programming sounds from, because I had 4 layers and stuff like that. And I said, do you know what? Let's get this. It's not really a huge amount of money. So I was the first in Scotland to order one. I pre-ordered it right away, and I got it straight away from Guitar at the end of March 2020. Or no, actually, it wasn't it? It was the beginning of March 2020, and I had it, and I was mucking about with it. And see, at first, I was like completely dumbfounded and overwhelmed. I was playing through the factory presets and saying to myself, "Oh my God, I have no idea how they're making this sound like this." I'm like, I've got so much to learn. So I started, and then of course COVID hit.
Yep.
And everything was locked down. So I ended up, I couldn't do my day job because the schools were locked down. I couldn't go out and gig. And basically I'd nothing coming in to the house money wise. My wife's in the same position. She's also works in schools. She couldn't work in schools. She couldn't go out. She couldn't go out and gig. So basically, we went from a couple that was earning a reasonably comfortable wage every month to absolutely zilch. and all the bills were still to be paid, and I'm like, I need to rush volume 1 for Korg Wavestate out the door. And like every single day in the first few weeks, I spent about 5-6 hours a day on the Wavestate until I had 20 performances done, and I said, I need to get that out there, and I need to actually get some income coming into the to the house. And like at the first week, I think there was only like 6 people bought it, and I'm like, oh no, this is not going well. But I continued. I said it's still very early. I continued, and I started making volume 2, and I get better at the programming and stuff. And then by the time I'd volume 2 finished, a lot of other people had started receiving their wave states because there was a sort of backlog.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got on to volume 3, volume 4, I actually made a decent amount of money in sales to actually tide me by a bit through COVID, which, by the way, and I'm just going to say on your pod, I'm immensely grateful to everybody that went and bought my presets, because it was just, it was a terrible time. And I get that it's a terrible time for everybody, but as well, people need to understand that me and my wife have been going out every weekend playing and performing to people since we were in the same band since we were both 19 years old. And then to all of a sudden get a call on the Wednesday and said, everything's shutting down, all your weddings and stuff that are booked.
Yeah.
They're all going to have to be rescheduled or cancelled. It was an absolute, like, total shock to the system. I was looking at Facebook posts and people were saying, oh, this COVID's great, I'm going to write an album and that. And I'm like, I can't actually even think about writing an album right now. Our world is completely collapsed round about us. So I was very grateful to especially all the people right at the beginning who did support me and did join the group I started and went and bought the presets. It was a huge help to me at that time.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, you put the work in. You know, you deserve the reward for it. And taking a punt on a new synth as well.
Yeah, and there was no editor software at that time. It all had to be programmed on. So volumes 1 to 8 that I'd done were all done basically using the buttons on the thing. There was no editor. Volume 9 that I'd done was the first volume that I had the help of an editor to program.
Yeah, and it's amazing actually. That makes the editor, it does make it a lot easier.
Well,
especially the Wavestate.
It certainly does. It does. I mean, to be honest with you, I still, when I'm programming for the Wavestate now, and I've just actually released a set last week, volume 12, which I never thought I'd ever get as far as volume 12, but it's out now. When I'm programming, I still use the hardware, and I do like my filters and envelopes and effects, dry wets and things like that on the actual hardware, but the actual wave sequencing part and the loading the samples and stuff like that, I use the editor for it now.
Yeah, it's funny. I just used the native Wavestate, and in the end, I actually bought the rack version because although it's the same sound, there's just something so much easier about having the thing in front of you to tweak the values. It is a much better experience.
Sound designing with a mouse is never the nicest experience. I mean, and like, put on it. I mean, I've designed patches for software synths as well, and in fact, volume 11 I'd done early last year. And I'd done that all because I was traveling, and I'd done that all on the native software. But it's so much more enjoyable to get your hands on stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so you've done sounds for the Modwave as well.
Yeah. So
how do you find programming that?
It's actually, of them all, it's my favourite to program. I believe, and bear in mind, this is only my personal opinion, I believe that in terms of the actual final quality of what you can create, I believe the Wavestate just edges the Modwave. That's only my opinion. But in terms of actually something that's fun to program, I really enjoyed programming the Modwave probably more than I enjoyed programming the Wavestate. And it's just the whole wavetable stuff at the oscillator stage is just such great fun, and you can be so creative and experimental at the source. And then, to be fair, more or less everything after the oscillator stages is pretty much the same as the Wavestate, minus the sample lane, I must add.
Yeah, but I think it's just to be able to get the oscillators and tweak the forms, like you said, and a bit of modulation, maybe a bit of FM. Yeah. You want to do? Oh no, we'll try a bit of ring, and it really draws you in.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good fun. But although I do believe, see, by the time you have 4 layers in the Wavestate, you can create absolutely huge, beautiful soundscapes on the Wavestate. And the thing about the Wavestate, what makes the Wavestate so unique, is the fact you've got the sample lane. So your source can be a combination of up to 64 different samples, and that's what you don't have on the Modwave. And that, I mean, to be honest with you, when I program for the Modwave, I very rarely use the samples on the Modwave. Occasionally I do, but it's maybe only to thicken something up or something like. I very rarely design patches on the Modwave that are purely sample based, because on the Wavestate, it's the samples, it's the deal breaker, because you can have up to 64 different samples, and they could be samples of your own as well. And that's just a huge deal breaker. Whereas on the Modwave, if you use samples, it's one multi-sample on an oscillator, and maybe another. You can't make interesting chains of different multi-samples, and that's what makes the Wavestate so unique. And people say to me, the Wavestate's just a rompler. And I'm like, well, no. You can use it as a rompler if you want. I would say there's a lot better romplers out there you could use than the Wavestate, if that's what you wanted. It's the fact, as I say, it's this continuous stream of different samples. So if say, for example, I'm making a simple synth brass patch up on the Wavestate, I won't just have one sawtooth sample and make the patch. I'll use multiple different sawtooth samples that are all slightly different, that's giving it this movement all the way through the sound. And you can actually get stuff that sounds really analog sounding on the Wavestate. And people don't see it like that. They just think plastic synth, cheap samples, that's rubbish. No, it's probably one of the most unique synths you could actually get your hands on, because it can do stuff that nothing else can do. It can do stuff that the synthesizers at £5,000 and up that can't do. I mean, even down to the mod processor. I mean, how amazing is that?
Yeah. And that takes some getting used to as well, yeah. But then it opens up so many options when you do that.
Yeah, but even down to, like, I set up my patches so that I can play bass notes with my left hand in the bottom of the keyboard, and I play stuff in the right hand with the same sound, but using the mod processor, I can set it that when I pitch bend, it only pitch bends the notes on the right hand, and it leaves my bass notes. And even that, how amazing is that? How many synths can you get that the minute you hit pitch bend, it bends every note you're playing? It's so great. Even the Hydrasynth doesn't do that. You can't do that in the Hydrasynth. You can in the Deluxe if you set up 2 layers and you've got 1 layer on one hand. But actually, just take, do you know what? Let's take one synth brass sound or something. I want to just play right hand melody and play drones in my left hand, and then pitch bend notes. The fact that you can actually pitch bend or put vibrato on the melody notes on your right hand without actually interfering with the notes you're playing in the left hand, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is good for that. I had some multi-samples of Hammond organ. This is on the Modwave, 4 multi-samples. So I had slow Leslie, medium, fast, really fast. And then I layered those across against the 4, 2 oscillators on 1 layer, 2 oscillators, and used the mod control so that, and use the mod processor so that when it was the first 50% did layer 1, and the second 50% did layer 3, and 4 oscillator. So it's so flexible.
Yeah, and that's another thing you can use. You can actually set up like dual layers on one layer using the mod processor. And the mod processor is such a unique thing. I don't know of any other synth that's got mod processors. Feel free if anybody knows to correct, but I've never heard of it, and certainly
it's almost going back to sort of the way I noticed on the 2600, the software 2600, there is a kind of a mod processor in the analog form you can get in sort of Eurorack. So it's kind of taken that analog mod processor and brought it into a modern synth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, do you do much sound design on that?
So sorry, you cut out the first part. I heard do much sound design in that, but I never
on the Hydrasynth.
On the Hydrasynth, yes. So I had the original Hydrasynth, the 49 key one, and I done 3 volumes for the original Hydrasynth, and then I decided, to be honest with you, I was never 100% happy with the original Hydrasynth. I didn't like the fact that, well, first of all, it was only 1 layer. I like a minimum of 2 layers, so I can either split or layer things together. I didn't really like the fact it was only one layer, so I upgraded it to the Deluxe, and then I've done 2 volumes of performance presets that are dual layer for the Hydrasynth Deluxe, and it's a big improvement for me. And there's things about the Hydrasynth that's lovely, to be honest with you, but there's still things that Modwave and Wavestate can do that Hydrasynth will never be able to do. So it's a different horses for courses or whatever. But it's a lovely machine to sit and play, and you can actually, if you work at it, you can get really creative and get some really nice stuff out of the Hydrasynth. It's a bit of a different process from Modwave. It's a very, people think it's similar, but they're 2 entirely different things for me. Hydrasynth and Modwave, the only thing in common is the word wavetable, but the Hydrasynth is a completely different implementation of wavetable synthesis.
Yeah, and that's the thing in wavetable as well. That opens up so many possibilities. I mean, I've created some wavetables myself, but once you get into that, that's just another thing that you can do with on the Modwave. That's you can take it down a whole new path.
Yeah, you have user wave tables, which you'll never be able to do in the Hydrasynth, by the way. And because of the way the Hydrasynth is constructed, if you were to put new wave tables on it, the way it's sort of programmed or whatever, you would need to reprogram all the mutators and things like that to suit the new. So user wave tables is never going to become an option in the Hydrasynth.
Have you been sort of ever tempted by some of these big, £5,000 sort of the Oberheims and the these big polysynths that you can get now?
Right. Okay. Right. See if I felt the synth was right for me, I would take a loan and I would get it. But there's a lot of things that are, and I'm going to have a slight rant here, I'm going to apologise in advance, but there's some things about some very expensive synthesizers that are on the market just now that for me to spend that kind of money on it is just not good enough. So the first thing that I think's just not good enough is to spend over £3,000 on a synthesizer and it not to have adequate effects on board. So there's your OBX out the water, because it's getting none. I just don't think that's acceptable in this day and age. I think every single synthesizer, every single hardware synthesizer that costs more than £1,000 should have, at very minimum, a decent chorus, a decent reverb, and a decent delay. At very minimum. Preferably some other stuff like flangers and phasers and wah-wahs and all these things, amp sims. I mean, that's getting on to something else that's absolutely fantastic about Wavestate and Modwave, is the effects engine that's inside it is like phenomenal. Right, the effects engine is brilliant, and I just don't think it's acceptable to be paying maybe £3,000 to £5,000 on a synth that only has a delay, or a delay that you can make sound a bit like a reverb. That's just not good enough for me. So that's the first thing. Now the next thing is probably an even bigger bummer for me, being a sound designer. There's no way I'm going to spend £3,000 on a synthesizer that's only got 32 free slots in it for me to store my sounds.
Yeah.
Or even 128 slots to store my own sounds. That, for me, that is just ludicrous in this day and age. I think it should be a minimum 1,024.
Yeah.
And I mean, even at that, I don't really think that's good enough in this day and age. But I would accept if I could store 1,000 of my own presets in it. Don't get me wrong, I would never program 1,000 presets, but at very least, I would be wanting to say I bought, let's see, the Moog Muse, okay? Because to be fair, that was the one I was having a dig at earlier with her 32 slots, right?
Yeah.
Right. If I buy a synth like the Moog Muse, I don't want to erase the factory presets, because I know for a fact someone will see the fact that I've got a Moog Muse and ask me to put preset number 8 or something in the track. And then I can get them back, but it's a hassle that I don't need. It's a $3,000 hassle that I don't need. And then I'm be looking for maybe at least 200 to 300 slots for my own presets, and then some other slots that I can stick in Jamie Morton's presets or something else. So if I'm using that synth to write music, I've got a whole palette of a load of different sound designers' ideas with that synth, and I just don't see how you can get there on 256.
Well, I've just looked on my Modwave native. I've got 1,500 sounds in there.
Yeah.
And that's not all of the ones that are on my actual Modwave. So yeah,
but that's the way it should be. And people say, but you'll never use all those presets. I know you'll never use it, but the option's there to use it. And if you produce music and things like that, so for example, I've just produced a track for my daughter. It's getting released next week. She's releasing it on Spotify and all that rubbish now that we release music on. But she's releasing it. So I've used Korg 2600 sounds on it. I've used some Modwave sounds on it. I've used some Wavestate sounds on it. However, see when she does a follow-up single, I'm not going to use the same sounds I've used on her last single. And then I've done a different remix. It's all different sounds. So you maybe never use 1,500 sounds, but you never know when one of those 1,500 sounds is going to be the perfect sound for the kind of track you're doing. And when you produce music for other people, it's not necessarily always the genres of music that you personally like as well. So people say, oh, that's rubbish, I hate that style of music, I hate that patch, I would never use that. But when you're in my boat, you may well need to use a patch that is not really particular to your taste, but does the job for what the client wants, basically.
So you're right. So if you're doing music production, having a synth that can hold 2,000-3,000 presets or whatever, nicely labeled, by your categories and tags and things like that.
Absolutely.
That's what you need, isn't it?
Absolutely. So even for example, the GeForce plugins, they've got a great browsing system, and I'm like, right, do you know what I want? A sort of analog sounding pad. I'll load up their OBX software, and I'll say I want a padding intro, so I'll hit the pad and I'll start going through all the pads. Because I don't actually sound design when I'm writing music. You can't do that. You end up then just sound designing and not writing any music. So the sound design needs to be a separate process when you're away from the writing music. Well, for me anyway.
Yeah, it can get diverted one way or the other. Although I was doing some patches the other day and thought, oh, this sounds great, I'll do a track from that. And then it's like, okay, do I finish doing these patches or do I finish break the track? Time is short.
But you know what? Once that patch is stored and saved, it's always there to go back to.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's the thing, and that's why we shouldn't have ridiculous user storage like 32 presets. I just think that's shocking.
That's I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. I mean, my DX100 had 32, I think, in 1986.
Exactly. But that's a lot. It's like a 1986 thing. I mean, like things like in the early noughties, things like your Access virus and things like that was capable of storing tens of thousands of presets. So I don't actually see now why companies are putting a limitation like that on, especially unexpected. I mean, don't get me wrong. I bought this Uno Synth Pro X, which is up here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. And it's a lovely synth, but it's a 128 factory, 128 user. But for for the price of what I paid for it, that's not something I'm going to greatly moan about, because it's not a hugely expensive synthesizer, which incidentally, although it has the preset limitation, which I've been moaning about, let's face it, it's got absolutely fantastic effects in it. The effects engine in that IK Multimedia Uno Synth Pro X is fantastic. And I really don't understand why these manufacturers making these beautiful looking, amazingly built poly synths can't come to a deal with a company like IK Multimedia or something like that and get some nice effects algorithms and throw them into the synth. It makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah. So is there a synth that's sort of on your watch list at the moment?
To be honest with you, and this is probably not a great answer for the synth loving community, but that there's actually nothing that's really make me want to go and buy it right at the moment. To be honest with you, I like the Polybrook 12, but that's a huge financial commitment to buy that. I quite like I'd play it at Superbooth, and it was really nice. But for me and for what I do, that would be an indulgence purchase. Okay, yeah. It wouldn't be a feasible business purchase, because I doubt very much that I would sell enough presets for a synth like the Polybrook 12 to make it worthwhile buying for that. It'd be a pure indulgence purchase, and that would be nice. There was a synth I played at Superbooth. What was it called? The Super Critical Red 6. It's quite interesting. It's got a lot going for it. That it wasn't finished when I was playing it. There was still things to improve on the firmware, but it was a synth that had a lot going for it, and I think the price of that's about 1,200, 1,300, which is more feasible for someone like me to go and buy. It seemed that, although I wouldn't say I'm super hyped up about going and getting one, but I'm seeing a lot of uniqueness in that synthesizer, which I'm not seeing in other stuff, and it would make it interesting for me to go and buy it. And I might later on in the year, depending on how things are going, put in an order for that one.
Yeah, interesting. I found as well is that if you restrict yourself to really learning something, you get so much out of it, like you did with the Wavestate, that lockdown period, or I did with the Modwave recently, or last year it was. I just didn't try and go on to the next thing. I just stayed with what I had, and you really get a lot out of it.
But I mean, that is the thing. I mean, the bottom line is the majority of synth sounds that people like can be created on numerous different kinds of synths in different ways. And it's a sort of problem I've got is the Wavestate particularly, and the Modwave to a certain extent, sound that bloody good that I've got to ask myself, why should I really be needing to go and spend £3,000+ on a synthesizer when I can get sounds like that out of these things? And that for me, it is. I mean, it's different. Say if you win the lottery or something, then and money's no object to you, well then fair enough. If I won the the lottery, I would probably go and order a Polybrute 12, a Muse. The super critical thing I was at, I'd probably order that beautiful Rhodes piano, the Rhodes V8, which is a beautiful thing. Because do you know what? I've got more money than I'll ever need, and do you know what I mean? I might as well indulge in these luxury items. But when I'm not in that position, I've got to say, you can make great synth sounds on synths that cost less than £700.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to. I mean, some of the sounds I get out that little IK multimedia thing's great. But the most expensive synth in here is that Hydrasynth Deluxe.
Yeah.
It was £1,400 at the time I bought it. That's the most expensive synth in here.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And there's always the pull of like the vintage synths. I know people who really lust after sort of a Jupiter X and Jupiter 8 or you know, all these classic 80s machines, but they have a limited amount of stuff. They're great as objects to have, but they're so expensive.
It's so expensive. I mean, to be fair, these instruments have basically become collector's items.
Yeah.
They're not for musicians like me that's going to pull a Jupiter 8 in here that costs £35,000 or something, and then start shredding up and down it like a lunatic, or taking it to my next gig. It's never going to happen. So for me, buying something like that just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. So for anybody that's interested in your patches, I'm just going to share the screen up on the video for the video feed as well. So where do people go for your sounds?
Okay, so my sounds are at www.marcbarnessounds.com, and if you scroll down the website, everything from Korg Wavestate Volume 1 through my Op6 presets, Modwave, Wavestate, Hydrasynth, Minilogue XD, and UnoSynth Pro, they're all there. They're all very reasonably priced. If you like them, if you like what I'm doing, fire in a wee purchase. Every little bit helps. It's not a lot of money. In Scotland here, I'd be lucky to get a couple of alcoholic drinks in a pub for the price of some of these banks. I forgot the Synclavia Regen. I was lucky enough to borrow one of them and do a set of sounds on one of them. That was quite nice as well. Yeah.
Well, I'll include the link along with the video. There is some brilliant sounds on there, and you've got some nice videos. Are the videos on there as well? Have you got are they on your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So say for example, if you want to view if you press view, if you scroll down, the video's linked in it. So you can either search for them on YouTube or get them through the website. Every sound bank I've ever done, every preset is demoed live with me playing it. There's no studio tricks going on or anything like that, or external effects or anything like that. It's basically just me playing it, and sometimes the duff notes and the wrong notes and the out of time chord changes. I know all that, but at some point you can't spend 3 weeks making a sound video to get it all perfect. So I know that, but it's me, it's natural. There's no quite, what you hear is exactly what you get. And as I say, if you like it, please, rather than trying to source it illegally or whatever, help the person out that's put the work in, because it is hours and hours of very hard work, as I'm sure you know, Ian.
Yeah.
And in terms of making a living out of sound design, you'll make a lot more money starting a window cleaning business or something than starting a sound design business. And if you speak to anybody in this game who does sounds and sells presets, they'll tell you exactly the same. We're doing it for the love of it, but do you know what? We're saying if you'd like it, basically fire us over a wee pint of beer or something.
Yeah, and it all helps towards, so
Absolutely.
you can do some more sound design.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it helps to maybe then buy another synth and then put my take on another synth, and the cycle keeps going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was great to talk to you, Mark. Really enjoyed our chat.
It was great. Thanks for having me on. It was lovely to finally meet you face to face, although virtually, but it's been really nice. I've obviously seen you post in the groups and seen your chat and stuff in the groups that I admin on Facebook, so it's been nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Really nice to talk to someone doing this as a hobby and a living and gigging and everything else. It's brilliant. So yeah, really, I'll include links for everything, and I hope we get to catch up again at some point in the future.
No problem at all. I look forward to it.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.